So what does The Weeknd, Dua Lipa, and Fleetwood Mac have in common? And how in the world are we doing them at church? That's the real question. What they have in common is this idea that we're on the search for things that bring us joy. We oftentimes have bitterness that builds up in our lives and that we want to walk away from people and say, hey, don't even watch me now if you don't want to see me happy. That we're searching for what can make us happy. We're driving through the night just trying to find that joy, trying to find that happiness. I was reading, and I don't want to ruin the song for you because I know it's just a beboppy song, but it's actually kind of a dark song, and so I'm getting ready to ruin it for you, so I guess I kind of do want to ruin it for you, but I don't. You know what I'm saying? And I was reading Esquire magazine, as I often do. No, I don't read Esquire magazine. But in reading Esquire magazine, there was this article in The Weeknd, and he talks about what the song means, the song Blinding Lights. And he said, hey, I don't condone this, but what the song is about someone who's driving intoxicated through the night because they just have to get to who they believe will bring them joy in life. They have to get to the place where their touch is the only thing that can make them happy. And so in spite of their intoxication, in spite of the fact that all they can see on the freeway, the empty freeway because the city is empty, in spite of all that, all they can see is the blinding, blurry lights that they have to get where they want to go. And I was thinking about that and I thought, aren't we like that sometimes though? That we're driving just a little bit intoxicated in our life. Now the intoxication is through the pain. And the intoxication is being intoxicated through trying to find joy that we want, being intoxicated by just the bitterness that we have that is built up in us over the long haul against somebody who hurt us or somebody who left us. The intoxication of driving through the mourning, of losing someone. And we've been watching through this whole book of Job. As we've been studying the book of Job, we've been seeing how we can find that we are learning about loss and what someone does when they go through loss. We're learning about how to face mourning. We're learning about how to find new purpose in life, even when it feels like your purpose has been taken away. And what we've seen is that it is easy, as we saw Job do, as he began to live in his doubts and he began to lean into his mourning and into his loss, that it's easy for us to be able to push away from God and push into this place where we are driving intoxicated in life by whatever it is that life has laid on us. But that Job, the story of Job, actually gives us the answer. And that's what we've been seeing throughout this series, is that we have the answer. In the first week, we saw how Job dealt with loss. And that at first he was dealing with loss in a way that would push God away, but eventually he saw that, wait a minute, I can trust God. That God will walk with me, that God mourns with me, that God did not cause this to happen. He didn't allow this to happen, but actually sin did this to me. And I don't want to continue to drive through life allowing sin to blur my vision, but I want to find a new vision with what God has for me, and I can trust Him. We saw that in Job. He learned that he could trust God. We saw through Job that he realized that a conversation with God is the power that we have, that prayer is really where our power lies. And Elihu, his friend, told him, if you would just call upon God, this God that you've come to know, this God who you know loves you and wants to walk through life with you, He will walk you through this and He will see for you. When your vision is blurry, He will be able to see for you and walk with you. And we saw that through Job. And in these 4 weeks together, we found that Job found his purpose. And he saw that this God whom he could trust, this God who would walk with him through the valley of the shadow of death, was also his Redeemer. And so last weekend we got to celebrate that Jesus is our great Redeemer, that He is our Redeemer who lives. And Job saw Him. He said, my Redeemer lives. And we can cry out as well that our Redeemer lives even when we're going through these places in life. And so we've learned so much through Job's experiences, through his pain and through his joy, through his sacrifice, but also his blessing. We've seen all that Job has to offer to us is what we can also have to offer to God, which is learning that we can trust Him. that we can get through this with him, and that though we are on the search for all the things that we might want in our lives, that God says, no, I've got something better for you, and you can drive towards me even in your pain and in your loss. Now, I'll have to say, in retrospect, studying the book of Job in 4 weeks was ambitious. You guys may have noticed that in the 55-minute sermons that we've been having, and me talking very, very fast. Did you notice 2 weeks ago especially, you needed to go back to the podcast? I think they allow you to watch on 2x speed, you know? I wonder if they have a -1 speed where you can just slow it down to half speed so that you can follow along, because I'm trying to get a lot in a lot of time. But I believe that this series, even though we have had a lot to cover, it has given us a front row seat to Job. And it's allowed us to really have a model for our lives that is not a model of looking to the weekend necessarily for how we need to run after life, understanding what he's going after, but saying we've got the answer to what you're going after. We know that our Redeemer lives, and Job has allowed us to see in a front row seat what that looks like. And so we've seen some good stuff. And I want us to end this series this week with the final verse in this large work of poetry that we've been studying about this man Job, and see the last words and learn what we can learn about our lives from the last words said about Job, and also what God has to say to us in this moment in our church. And so let's look at Job chapter 42, verse 17 together. It's the very last words said about this man Job in this book. It says, "Then he died, an old man who had lived a long, full life." And I love the fact that we get to see the ending with Job. We've walked through so much with him. We've seen so much with him. And now we get to see the end of his story. And I think there's so much that we can learn from it. But now here's the deal. We can see the end of the story, and we can read this verse, and we can kind of go, wait a minute. We can look at this with a couple of different perspectives. The first perspective is we could see it from the vantage point of a glass half empty. And we can look at this verse and go, wait a minute. How in the world does God in his word and the writer of Job say that this man, then he died, but he lived a full life? Like, how in the world can we look at Job and have seen what he went through? And do you remember that Job's 10 children died, Pastor? Do you remember that all of his wealth was taken away? Do you remember that he lost everything? I mean, how are we going to end the book of Job saying that he lived a long, full life? And so we could have this half glass empty view of this book. And oftentimes we'll do that. The other way we can look at it is we could have a glass half full. And we could look at the book of Job and go, well, wait a minute. I mean, God won. Everything worked out in the end, right? I mean, he's okay now. I mean, he got everything restored and everything was good. And isn't that what we often do to people in their time of mourning? We have this half glass full kind of approach to life, and they're going through some painful stuff, and they're dealing with painful stuff. And we're like, but God's going to win in the end. Just know, they're going through just hell on earth. And we're like, but you're going to go to heaven one day. And they're like, but that's not now, right? And so sometimes it's just like, oh, I'm dealing with some stuff. And so we can sometimes overcorrect, and we can just have the glass half full approach. And sometimes we can just kind of see all the negative, and it's the glass half empty approach in life. And it just sees the negative of all that happened. And really, we're asked to choose from these two places, right? So often in life. It's like, oh, are you going to see it from the positive? Or are you going to, what is it? Oh, you're going to make lemonade out of lemons. When life gives you lemon, we kind of have that approach. Or we just walk around, I always call it being Eeyore. Like, we just walk around and everything's bad and no one's doing anything I like. And we can't ever enjoy anything. And we always have a scowl on our face. And it feels like we just have to choose from these two choices about how to approach life and even how to look at this story of Job. But I think there's a third way. Everybody say third way. I think there's a third way. I think there's another way to get to look at life. There's actually a third way. We could look at the songs that we sang earlier and we could go, man, The Weeknd's really got it all wrong. He's just talking about driving through the night intoxicated, like to get to somebody and thinking that they can bring you real joy. And we can look at that purely from the negative, and I think that's what we tend to do with pop culture sometimes as the church. Or we can look at it the positive, and we can go, well, wait a minute. He knows there's something deep within him that's searching. There's something deep within him that knows there's more to life. I mean, when we read the Fleetwood Mac lyrics, we know, I mean, this is someone who's been hurt, who's had someone to play with their emotions, who's had someone who thinks there's something better than them on the other side. And it can start to grow up this bitterness. And like Dua Lipa, who says, hey, if you don't want to come, if you don't want to see me happy, because if you don't want to see me dancing with somebody, you better just stay away, because I've moved on. I've moved on from all of everything you had to offer. And we can see that as the negative, or we can say, okay, these are two people who realize we should have dreams. And there is more for us in life. And we shouldn't let bitterness really come and build in us and grow in us. But I understand why she was hurt, and I understand why it's hard sometimes to move on. And so we can see within it, in the context of how we're looking at it through the scriptures and the lens of the scripture, we can see that there's an understanding of the fact that inside of all of us, we are searching for something. There's a third way. There's a third way to look at the option. And I'll get to that in just a moment. But first, I just want to look at a few important things in Job's life in the final verse of the book before I show you the third way that we can look at life. And these principles I want to pull out of this one verse and show us how they really can look at it, and how Job's life can really affect your life. Say mine. It's always my goal to get you to realize this sermon is about you. It's not about the person sitting next to you. It's not about the friend that's hurt you. It's not about the spouse that left you. It's about you. And you can have impact in your life by what we see in this final verse from Job. So let's look at it. The first word, let's just pick it apart word by word. The first word is then. It says then. What does then mean? Then means after that. It means next. It means afterwards. So it says all of these things happened in Job's life. Then it moves on into the last part of his life. What came afterwards? And what this tells us is one of the greatest things we can learn in life is to embrace the seasons of life. If you've been around very long at all, you've not only noticed that there are seasons in our year, but there are seasons that we go through in life. And some of our greatest disappointments actually come from the inability to embrace the seasons that come along our way. And so we have these really delineating points in our life where we move into new seasons, where we move into something new. That's what Dua Lipa was saying. She was saying, hey, I've moved on from you. You hurt me, but I've moved on from you. I'm in a new season in my life. I'm in a new place in my life. And so if you don't want to see me in the next season of my life, where I've done a full 180, I've turned completely away from you. And if you don't want to see me in that season in my life, you better not come around, because I've moved on. It's talking about seasons. And I believe it's our inability to embrace the season that oftentimes disappoints us the most in life. In fact, often our disappointment is born kind of theoretically out of the fact that we're wishing it was still summer one season rather than really enjoying the beauty that comes with fall the next season. Think about this. Let me break it down practically for you. You prayed and you asked God that you could have a baby. And then you get into the toddler years and you're praying and you're asking God that he would get you out of the toddler years and into the next season, right? We pray for motherhood, fatherhood. We ask God for it. And then what do we end up doing? Sitting around with other dads or other moms complaining about our kids, right? It's a season thing. It's not embracing the season. And by the way, can I just tell you, as someone who now can be a little bit of a cliche, that your kids really don't stay young very long at all. That they grow up so fast. I've been telling them since they were little to stop, and they just don't listen. They keep growing up. And so, honestly, we've almost gotten to the place in our life. I told someone the other day, I have not changed a diaper in now years. Absolutely years. And I don't plan on ever changing any until I have grandchildren. I will be the best grandfather who ever existed on the face of the earth. I'm just putting that out there so that you understand it and know that you're going for second place. But I will change diapers then, but I haven't changed a diaper in a long time. We have kids now who pretty much know to wipe their feet off, and they don't track mud throughout the house and stuff. And so there aren't any little feet prints throughout the house anymore. They grew up fast, and it's a season. It's a season, right? But we tend to scorn the seasons, and we always look for the next season, the next. And it tells us that Job did have a next, and I think he had very many next in his life. Think about all the seasons that Job went through. Seasons of pain, seasons of loss, seasons of mourning, seasons of joy. We talked about Job last week. He had a time where his kids were getting together, and he saw them as adults enjoying each other, and he had a great family life, and he had that season, but other seasons come along. And we can oftentimes not embrace the season of learning a new skill. Season of learning a new skill is so difficult because the season of learning a new skill is like you've been promoted or you got a new job and you prayed for that job and you prayed for that promotion and you wanted that team and you wanted those people on your team, but now you've learned that they're going to actually need to be developed. You're going to actually have to lead them. You said, make me the leader, but now you've figured out that being the leader is difficult. And so now you've got to learn a new skill, the skill of how to lead someone, the skill of how to help someone to do their job better. And it is hard to learn new skills. The older you get, the more difficult it is to learn new skills. And the deal is learning new skills is most of the time born out of failure. But it's a season. There are seasons when we have to learn new skills. That comes in parenting. We talked about parenting already. But you finally learn how to parent that toddler. And guess what? They move up to be in their next stage of development. And you finally learn how to develop that elementary school child, and then they're middle schoolers. And then you finally learn how to parent a middle schooler, and they're a high schooler. And then you have to it's seasons. It's seasons. And it's new skills and learning new skills. It's a season of growing through failure. It's a season of friendships. Friendships are seasonal. Have you learned that yet in life? That there's a lot of seasons to friendships. I thank God for all of the friends He has brought into my life in different seasons of my life. There are some friends that I honestly don't have any contact with anymore. I still think fondly of them, but for one reason or another, whether it's geographical or whatever, we have not kept up with one another. But I thank God for the season. And it's in friendships. This is illustrated so well because friendships are like this. You have to understand with friendships that there is a season of just toil. Of really tilling the new land, of breaking up the dirt and getting it ready to put seeds into. And here's what I've noticed with people when it comes to friendships. We love the fruit that is born out of good friendships, but we rarely want to take the time that it really takes to till the ground and really plant the seeds that will give forth the fruit of those friendships. And so what we will do is we long for what we see in other people's lives. We want to go and just pick the fruit from their lives. And I wish I could have their friendships, and I wish I could be like them. But the truth of the matter is that we don't want to do what they did to get what they have. Because you have to walk through some junk with people to become really good friends. Have you noticed that really good friends are the ones that have made you mad, hurt you, and walked away at some point from you, but you made it through it? That you were able to till the ground, plant the seed, watch the things grow up, and so then we get the fruit from it. And here's what I've learned about good friendships, really good friendships. They never lie real dormant for long. I've got this guy. We were really good friends at one point in our life because we worked on the same church staff together, and that just really bears friendship in a lot of ways. And so, but then geographically and other things happened, and we went our separate ways, and we kept up with each other a little bit. And every couple years, we will either be in the same place and see each other, or just have a text conversation or something. But there was really good fruit on that vine of that friendship. He was an amazing friend to me. And a couple of months ago, it was interesting, in a period of time where I thought, man, I felt this in my spirit. I was like, I could just really use some extra prayer on Sunday mornings. It was just, it was like, man, there's a team that prays for me, which I love, and I have elders that are praying for me, but there was just something that was like, man, I'm preaching some heavy stuff coming up, and I'm preaching some stuff that's going to take some time to develop, and I'd love somebody praying for me that understands that. And not out of the blue, but by the leading of the Holy Spirit, this guy started texting me on Sunday mornings. He started texting me, hey, I'm praying for you. I just felt like I needed to pray for you. Here's a verse that I think will just sit well with you. And every Sunday morning now, he texts me. It's the fruit from a friendship that was worked hard upon, that felt like it went away. What I'm saying is, don't despise the seasons, because you might be able to pick fruit off of that vine later if you don't burn everything down. But in a painful moment of moving from one season to the next, what I find that we often do is we torch the friends behind us. We get rid of everything that we get rid of everything about them. If they're moving on from us, we're moving on from them, and we act like the songs we're singing. And what we're supposed to act like is the poetry that we're reading about of a righteous man who learned to grow and to move forward in his life. And so there's seasons, and we got to embrace that. What would it look like if you embraced the then? Galatians 6:9 is what it would look like. And let us not grow weary in doing and well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart. In other words, there will be a harvest if we don't lose heart. There will be a harvest in our spiritual development if we don't run back to things in the past that used to feed us, that no longer have a right to feed us, but we'll just go through the difficult things and we'll go through the hard things, that God would actually be able to reap something if we didn't go back and we move forward into the new season. And so here's what I want for you in your life. I want you to embrace the seasons. And there are difficult seasons and there are hard seasons, but don't grow weary in well-doing during those seasons. What if we were able to do that? To strive towards goals, yes, but to actually thrive in the season that you're currently in and embrace the change of seasons when they come. I think it would change our lives. Here's the next thing. That was just one word. Let's go to the next ones. It says, then he died. You're like, Pastor, thought you said you were going to give us how to find joy in life. I thought you were going to talk to us about how to the third way to be able to look at life. That he died. That's not very inspiring. I think it actually is. Here's the first thing it reminds us of. Everyone dies. Everybody. Statistics are still coming in at about 100% that you will die. Right? I mean, you know this. I'm surprised at how surprised we are when people die. Have you ever noticed how we still are blown away that people die? But everyone does it. It's something that you're going to do one day. I don't know if you've ever really thought about this fact, but you're going to die one day because everyone dies. Now, we can look at that with a glass half empty and say, great, everybody dies. Pastor just told us I'm going to die. Never really thought about the fact that I'm going to die before, but now I'm really sad about it, and I don't want to die. And what if I die today? Because none of us really know. I mean, are we going to die today? We're going to die 100 years from now? Probably not 100. I don't want to live to be 100. I don't know about you. It looks like people are in really bad pain when they get to that age, and I just don't want to be there. But so I'd like to be with Jesus. But we could look at it from this kind of half glass, or glass half empty kind of deal. Or we could even look at it from a glass half full. Like, I'm not going to die. I'm eating organic, and I eat my kale, and I'm going to live as long as I want to live. And, then while you're eating your kale, because you're so disgusted by it, a bus runs over you, and so then you die while eating kale, So you can look at it that way, just glass half full. Everything's going to be okay. I'm just going to ignore the fact that I'm going to die. Or we could look at Job and go, okay, this was a righteous dude, not like in the 70s way. I'm not talking about that kind of righteous dude. I'm talking about he was a righteous man who loved God, who God redeemed everything in his life. He was his redeemer, and yet he still died. So if he died, I'm going to die too. But his life was restored in such a way. I think what Job can teach us is when then he died, that we can actually recognize that we don't have to fear death. That's the first thing, because we have a redeemer who lives. We don't have to fear death. Everything comes to an end. That's about those seasons, right? Everything comes to an end. But we don't have to fear death. And because of that, I find that those who fear death the most actually live the most miserable lives, because everything is fear to them. I might be sick. I might get sick. I might die. They might die. Someone else might die. Instead of going, you know what? We're all going to die one day. But what if we actually lived life to the absolute fullest? What if we got everything out of life, because we do realize this life will come to an end one day. There is more for us beyond eternity, by the way, if you allow Jesus to save you. But we can rest in knowing that we can get the most out of the days that God has given me. And I want to do that. I want to live life to the absolute fullest. And then it allows me to, if I'll have a good perspective on the fact that he died, is that I just keep an eye towards heaven. Like we talked about in week 1. When I find that life is too miserable to even bear, and sometimes it is like that I go, well, this is not all there is. This is going to end, but this is not all there is. There's so much more that God has for me. And so we can look at life that way when we just realize, all right, Job died. But it says something about Job after the then he died that I think is the most important part of this verse. Then he died, an old man who had lived a long, full life. Everybody say full. Lived a full life. The word there in the Hebrew is this word sabah. Sabah is this word that means, it literally, here's the word picture it paints. You have sat down to the table and you have ate to your full. You have satiated your hunger. You have eaten to the place where you have satiated all your hunger. You're so full, you're so satisfied that you can push yourself away from the table because you are full. You have been full of everything that life has to offer. In the New Testament, the complementary word would be perissos. It's the word that Jesus used when he said, I will give them life and I will give them life abundant. The word perissos means super added. It means not just the ice cream, but an ice cream with a brownie and some sprinkles and some Cool Whip and some cherry on top. And then I'm digging in because it's everything. It's abundantly more than I could ever ask or imagine. It is perissos, super added life. And Jesus said he wants to give us that life. And Job, it says he got to the end of his life and he died. Yes, everything comes to an end. There are seasons to this, but he got everything out of life that life was throwing at him. And this is not seeing, I love this about Job, because this is not seeing it just from a glass half empty or a glass half full kind of approach to life. And I love the perspective because Job could lean into either one of those. But I love the perspective of Job because you can say he lived a full life, and maybe you could judge like others that you see and go, oh, they're living a full life, but they've never been through anything painful. I mean, they don't know what it's like to go through what I went through, and that's what we do, right? We judge other people's life when they have a full life, and we're like, oh, I just have no idea. They have no idea what it's really like to go through things, and we just don't know what they went through just because we don't know. And we don't have a clue what they've gone through to get to what they've gotten. Like I said, everybody wants what other people have, but they're not willing to go through what other people have gone through to get it. And so we will judge them, but we can't judge Job because we know what he's been through. We know the pain that he's been through. We know the hell that he walked through and the loss that he walked through and in the mourning that he had to do and the way that life treated him. We know this about Job. And yet it still says he had a full life. So what's the third way? The third way is that we need both of these. Well, we need to recognize that sometimes pain comes into life. We can't ignore it, can't act like it doesn't exist. It's not helpful to do that. And that's a part of who we are. Our pain, our suffering, our loss is a part of who we are. And that is part of our story. And it's part of Job's story. He did lose his family. He did lose his wealth. He never forgot about that. He never got to a place in his life where he was like, oh, yeah, I don't care about all that. That was a part of who he was. But the third way is that we don't just see that. We don't just concentrate on that. But we actually find the moments, too. The moments where God comes and he heals us. The moments where we see things. It's the glass half full. And we find that. And when we find that, we're able to combine the two. They are who we are. And it makes for an overflowing life. A full, to the brim, perissos, sabah life. Where we say, I am satiated in what God has given me. I know that I've gone through the pain. I know that I've gone through the trials. But I believe that God has given me. And it's the paradox, right? We need both for our lives. We need both to really be full. The paradox is we have to go through pain to really experience joy. Joy is best felt on the other side of pain. It's the paradox. We appreciate life the most after we're gone. We say the best things about people at their funerals, don't we? And we ought to change that, by the way, and just really funnel our inner prophet John Mayer and say what we need to say. Say it before the funeral. Say it before you're sitting up reading the poetry you wrote about them. Well, in fact, I've thought about we ought to have funerals before people die. We ought to really celebrate their lives before they die. We ought to tell them what they mean to us before they die. The funeral doesn't get to them, right? And so we ought to get to them before. In fact, Johnny, I've said I'm going to preach my own funeral. I might even attend my own funeral. We might do that. I want to see you be a little bit sad at least a week. I want you to mourn at least a week. And I want you to be a little bit sad, but then I want you celebrate who I was and what God did with my life, because I want to be able to find that joy in life. But it's when people go away that we say the best things about them. We actually appreciate life the most when it's over. We actually appreciate childhood the most when it's over. Like, oh man, I wish I could have that back. What if we did that? What if we found both, the full life, the paradox of life? In order to be strong, we've got to actually break down our weaknesses, recognize them, own them, so that God can be strong in us. It's the paradox. The paradox is everywhere. To live life full, we must embrace this paradox. And so Job, he finishes life well. He finishes full. Now, that's my teaching. That's the end of this verse. I've gone through it with you. I've shown you what we can really learn from Job at the end of his life. That we can learn that we all have seasons, that we all are going to die, that there is a certain amount of life that we get, and we should live it to the fullest. Petty saw Sabah. We should be satiated in who God is. So and you can apply that in 100 different places in your life. For some of you moms and dads, you were sitting there going, you know what, I need to embrace this season better in my life. I've been frustrated about this season. I need to embrace this season. For some of you, you just need to recognize that a season has passed. And that's how you're going to apply it in your personal life. You're going to go, wait a minute, I have been mourning this season and not enjoying the one that I'm currently in. And yes, that was a great season in my life. It brought good things to me. But this is a new season, and it's a season that the Lord has made. And so I am going to enjoy it. And maybe that's the way you could apply it. For some of you, maybe it was just kind of facing your own mortality for a moment. It's going, yeah, you know what, I will die. And so I want to live this life to the absolute fullest. You could apply, and I want you to, with Holy Spirit's help, to apply this in your life in some way. I hope you'll take time to really think about that. But for me, I wanted to choose one application to close this series out on, because I think it's an application that is for our entire church. And it really has to do with going into a new season. So on August 22nd, everybody say August 22nd. Write it down in your calendars. If you got something planned on that day, cancel it. Be here on August 22nd, because on August 22nd, we are celebrating 10 years as a church. It's our 10-year anniversary, and in addition to celebrating those 10 years, we are going to open up all of the brand new seating that's back here in the back. We're going to have almost 1,000 seats available in this auditorium, and so we're going to celebrate. We're going to have a good time on August 22nd. I want all of you to be here. That is not the day to wake up and be like, oh, I'll just join online. Shouldn't do that any day unless you have to join online. Be here. I want you to be here. I want you to sit in a seat with the 15 people that you've invited, and we're going to celebrate together. It's a new season. But here's what I was thinking about new season, because I was telling Connie, I was like, I want to preach, and I think God wants me to talk about this, this new season that we're going into, the finish line of this building project and all of this, and I think I can use the end of Job's life to really propel us into the new season. She said, what do you mean the end of Job's life? It's not the end of the church. It's a new season for the church. I said, oh, I know. It's the end of one season, and it's the beginning of a new season. It's the end of what has happened, and we're going to celebrate it, but we're moving forward to what God can do next in our lives. And there's a couple of big decisions. That's right. Come on. You can give it up. Give it up. Give it up. There's a couple of big decisions that I think we need to make as a church before this season comes. So we can live in the old season and be like, oh, we are Freedom Church. We love Freedom Church. Or we can recognize that we are Freedom Church, but we're getting ready to see in this new season probably the most growth we've ever seen as a church. We have the seats now. We have the vision for it. And I believe that God has given us favor. I've actually believed that God has shown me a vision of what this church is going to look like in this next season. And it is incredible what God is going to allow us to do. But we've got to recognize that every single one of you here is going to be a part of the new season. And I want you to embrace it. We've got to embrace the season that we are going into, not just celebrate the season that we are living. And so how do we do that? We got to be prepared for our next season. And here's what I'm calling on you. God has gifted every single one of you. And he has gifted you in such a way that you were specifically made to fill a piece of the puzzle here at Freedom Church. You are Freedom Church. And if you're not serving in the place where God has gifted you to serve, then we are missing out on you. And I want to invite you into being a part of that. And in order to really be able to serve the people who aren't here yet, and this church has always been about the people who are here, serving the people who aren't here yet. And that's what we're about. And so in order to do that, every single one of you, everybody say everybody. Everybody has to play their part. And so I am asking you, because I want to see God's best in you, for you to serve on the team here at Freedom Church. How can you do that? There's a QR code all around the church. I think they're going to put it up on the screens as well. You just point your phone at that QR code anywhere in the church, and you can go to a simple form that you just fill out and says, I don't know what I need to do, but I want to get involved at Freedom Church, and we would love to have you to get involved. Not only would we love to have you get involved, I'm just telling you, you need to be involved. Now, God's church does not need us. I tell everybody all the time, everybody's important, but everybody no one's indispensable. And so God can move on without me if I choose not to obey him. But in my obedience, when I choose to obey him, I need what he has for my life. And you need God's calling on your life. You want to bring joy into your life? You want to start searching through the night to try to find something that can give you joy? You want to do that? You serve in the capacity that God has given you and wired you up to serve at Freedom Church, and I guarantee you it's going to do that. So you're going to fill out that form. If you don't I don't want to fill out a form, I just want to talk to someone, you can go to the help desk, and Callissa's going to be there, and she would love to help you to be able to find your place at Freedom Church. And here's what I'm telling you. Our staff will follow up with you in just a matter of hours, or less than 24 hours, to be able to help you walk through what it is that you need to do and how you need to be able to do that. And so I want you all on the team. We need you all to be on the team because we got people coming. We got guests coming over, and we need to be prepared. The next thing I want you to do is to fill heaven with prayers for the people who should come. Fill heaven with prayers for the people who should come. ID 3 people. 3 people that you know are far from God, but they're close to you. See, that's what I love about our mission statement is we know that there are people who are far from God. It doesn't take a lot for me to convince you of that. But they're also close to you. They're not close to me, but they're close to you. And you can get them to fill one of these seats that is empty and one of the many seats that we have empty coming in the future. And you can invite them to be here to one of those 3 services on August 22nd where we will celebrate not only all that God has done, but celebrate the new space that he has given us, and we will see life change for them. Well, in order for that to happen, you've got to fill heaven with prayers for those people. Identify them and pray for them every single day now leading up to that. But then also the next thing I need you to do is to make the invite. You got to invite them. Don't just pray for them. Pray like it depends on your prayers, and then work like it depends on you. Go and invite them to come with you. Tell them, I've got a seat for you. You can sit beside me. Go and bring them. Say, I'll pick you up. We can go have some lunch afterwards. We can have some breakfast before. Whatever the time you come. And say, I'm gonna sit with you because I love you that much. And I can't wait for you to be able to see the results of what that does. So you're going to pray heaven down, and you're going to make the invite. And then I have one last thing. Now, this is probably the most important thing I want to talk about. With us moving forward into this new season in our life, there is something that as family we need to do. And that is we need to finish this building project well. Now, I'm getting ready. I'm gonna give the warning to everybody because I don't want you to be surprised. We never want you to be surprised by anything. I'm getting ready to talk about money. Okay? Now, I believe, and we've always done this at this church, that you should talk about money when it comes to the church. Because like, you guys are smart, right? You guys are smart? Yeah, all right. So you realize that it takes money for this to happen. There's nobody here going, God just allows this to happen. They gave us free sheetrock and free concrete, and everything's just free because people love God that much, right? You know that. Like, you know the seat you sit in costs $47. You know that. And you're like, our pastor knows exactly how much the seats cost. Yes, I do, because we're getting ready to buy a lot of them, all right? So we're getting ready to buy new chairs. And we're getting ready to fill those chairs. And we're finishing this project. And how many of you have been to Lowe's recently? And you've seen now that if you've got 3 or 4 pieces of plywood in your back of your pickup truck, everybody's like, can't hide money. Look at that guy. Got 3 pieces of plywood. He's investing for the future. He's going to put that at the bank. He's just, that's like gold, right? You know that price has escalated. You know that anytime you're in a building project, because you're smart, you know that anytime you're in a building project, there are things you end up having to do that you didn't know you were going to have to do, and there's things that you didn't count on. And so a couple years ago, we all came together as a church, and we did what we called Step In. And it was a chance for us just to step into all that God had for us And we gave almost $700,000 towards the down payment and some of the things that we would need for this building that we've already opened in some part and going to open in large part on August 22nd. But I've had a couple people come up to me, and they've said, hey, how are we doing on that? Like, how is that going? I was like, our church is so faithful. It's incredible what we were able to do. And they said, well, don't leave me out. I want to give more. Don't leave me out. Literally, conversation I had right over there in the hallway 2 weeks ago. Don't leave me out. I want to do more. Let me know what we can do. And so I'm talking to those of us who have stepped in that this is the time where we're going to be able to give some more to finish this project well. We're going to do a 1-year commitment where we're going to say, finish this project out well, get us into the place that we need to be, because things do cost money, and we've got to go towards that. And I want you to be able to be a part of that, because those of us who were a part before want to be a part again. But there's a whole other group. There's a whole other group. I was talking with another friend of mine, and he said, hey, we started coming to this church, and the building was already being built. This church was already what this church is, but I know at some point this church was built on the backbone of those who sacrificially gave before me. And he's like, I want to know what I can do. How can I give? And so I want to give you an opportunity. Those of you who have not been a part of this project, you weren't a part of Step In. You don't even know what that is. But I want to give you a chance to be a part. So on August 22nd, here's what we're going to do. And I actually love talking about money, because I believe that where our treasure is, there our heart will be also. And so we serve with our time. We've talked about that already. We need everybody giving time. We serve with our talent. Talked about that. God especially designed you, uniquely designed you to do what you can do at this church. And then we also serve God with our treasure. And we talk about that all the time here at Freedom. And I love talking about it, because where your treasure is, there your heart will be. And I know your heart is here. I know this is your house. And I know you realize that the hundreds, if not thousands of people who will be baptized in this church because of the legacy that you're going to build with this gift. And I know you know there will be close to 400 kids at VBS this week going on. And here's the deal with that. Up until this point, we couldn't ever do more than 225. That was our cap. We were like, we can't do more than that. Got to cut registration off. Now we're like, come on, we got plenty of room. Why? Because someone invested in those kids, and they're going to be here. We don't care about buildings. I think you can tell by the concrete that we put on the floors and the painted sheetrock is all we do, that we're not all about beautification of buildings. We're about the beautification of the bride of Christ. And we're about these kids who will know Jesus now because of that. We're about the fact that 1,000 people will be able to be in one worship experience at our church. And so that means we can reach 5,000 people plus in this building with multiple services. And so I'm just excited about it. And so Connie and I can't wait to pray about what we're going to do. We're honored to be able to. So on August 22nd, here's what I'm challenging our church to. There's really a figure that we need. It's $150,000 that we need to raise that weekend. And you can start giving to that now, by the way. It doesn't have to be on August 22nd. And then we're going to make pledges for an additional $150,000 to finish out the project well. And I know that seems like a ton of money, but there's a ton of us. And so I don't want you to feel like, oh my goodness, I can't even imagine $150,000. I want you to know that what you pray about and what God tells you to give, if you'll obediently do that, it's going to be more than we could ever ask for or imagine. We will be able to celebrate all that God does. It is a very attainable goal by the nearly 3,000 people we believe at this point who call Freedom Church home. Very attainable goal. And so we're going to put that goal before us, and we're going to say, we can do this. Now, there are some of you who the figure that you're going to pray about, you would say, I mean, does that really make a difference? And I would tell you, remember the widow's mite. It makes a tremendous difference. We want everybody participating. And then there are some of you who are saying, you know what, God has blessed me, and I believe I can carry a large portion of that goal. I can carry it now and over the next year, and I believe that God is going to give you if you'll pray. Here's what I know. I don't have to keep talking about it. I won't make a big deal about it in the weeks to come, because I know this. If you pray and you ask God, and I believe you will, because that's what this church does, God will give you exactly what you need to do. And whatever He gives you, no matter how scary it is to you or how sacrificial it is to you, it will be exactly what He has for you, and it will make the difference in your life and this church's life. So that's what we're going to do. August 22nd, we are going to celebrate. Oh, my goodness, we're going to celebrate. And then we are going to have an amazing opportunity to bring everything to God. Because on May the 21st, 2011, this church began on the backbone of 80 individuals, about 30 families, who came and gave $47,000 just so we could start this church. And I'm going to tell you, that was insurmountable to us at that time. Couldn't even figure out how we would do what we needed to do to start this church. And yet now you sit in the favor of those sacrifices. I guess you could say it like this. You sit in a seat of sacrifice. And now, will people sit in your seat of sacrifice in days to come? I believe they will. God, would you remind us of who you are? God, we're going to trust you in everything that we do. We know that this life that you have for us, God, you've got a plan. You want to make it full. And now as we worship you and give this time to you, you're going to prompt us with exactly how we can serve, where we can serve, and how we can give of our time, our talent, and our treasure to finish this project strong, but move into the next season with everything. Be full. In Jesus' name, amen.